everyone, my name is Travis and welcome to today's Guardian build breakdown video. So, I don't know if you guys have heard, but I have heard about what is to come in the next season, and I do have to tell you, I think this build may grow to be a suitable replacement for my raid build. And I think you guys should also consider it as well. So, I will let you guys know what I mean by that in the end of the video. But for now, let's hop on into it. So, we got ourselves here our Warlock. I think he looks pretty good. If you guys do too, let me know in the comments below. And of course, when it comes to these builds, just generally let me know if you think that I should have a better weapon or maybe another piece of armor or maybe some mods or perks that may help to improve this Guardian. I'm always open to improvements. And I'm just here to show you guys what I like to have fun with, and hopefully you guys can like these too and have fun with them as well. So we'll hop right into our super. So our super gives us constant healing, known as our Well of Radiance. It used to be absolutely busted and broken back in the day when it used to give you an overshield as well. Bungie decided to take that away because it was the right thing to do, and rightfully so. Practically couldn't kill a Well of Radiance Warlock in PvP when they had that super activated. But now I think it actually is in a good place. So, yeah. And of course, with how we have everything kitted out, we can pretty much pop these off like maybe 2, 3 times, maybe even 4 if you're really good. So with our abilities, we have our Healing Rift. Always good to stay alive as long as you can. So that's why I have that. For the movement, I have Burst, just because I don't really favor Control too much, since, I don't have a lot of speed on my dude. Tier 2, honestly, if I could have it lower, I would. Just, that's between all of you and me. So, yeah. Burst Glide is where it's at. I like that extra oomph going forward. So, for the melee, I was kind of conflicted. I wanted to do Celestial Fire, but then I realized that Celestial Fire is more concentrated. So another Warlock build that I did for raids is the Starfire Protocol Solar Warlock. It actually uses Celestial Fire just because it's a lot better with that build. It works better, feels better. And of course, I'm going to be playing more defensively with that build. With this build, on the other hand, I'm going to be playing a little bit more offensively. So Incinerator Snap definitely helps with that. Plus, with some of the fragments that we have, we also can make use of this melee's ability to create ignitions, which is really cool. So with our grenade of choice, if we didn't have the seasonal perks, guys, I would recommend either Solar, Fusion, or even maybe still ride with Firebolt. It's still pretty good. But because of the seasonal perks that we have right now, I'm making use of Firebolt grenades. For the aspects, we have Touch of Flame. Since we have Firebolt grenades, basically this allows us, with this aspect, to increase the target search radius and maximum target counts. So what they mean by that is that when you throw the grenade, you don't necessarily have to hit your enemy. You can kind of skew it off a little bit to the left or right, and it will basically find its opponent and kill them. And then of course, I believe this can go up to like 5 enemies consecutively too, when it comes to the target count. And then for our other aspect, we have Icarus Dash. Movement is king when you're in the midst of battle, so definitely want to have the ability to dodge. And for us Warlocks, we can dodge while we're in the air. So yeah. Alright, fragments. So we have Ember of Searing. Basically, if we defeat scorched targets just with anything in general, we get melee energy. This also allows us to produce a fire sprite, which allows us to regain our grenade energy by a little bit when we pick them up. Keep in mind, if too many fire sprites drop at a given moment, there will be a cooldown, and therefore we would have to wait, I think it's like 5 seconds. So, yeah. But pretty good overall. We have Ember Blistering. Basically, when we defeat targets with solar ignitions, that'll grant us grenade energy. So that's where the incinerator snap comes in for this. This also can be procced as well from the grenades as well. So like if you use your incinerator snap and you scorch targets enough, and then you follow it up with a grenade, it can cause an ignition. In order to obtain an ignition, you need to apply 100 stacks of scorch to an enemy. So with this build, that's actually pretty easy to do. We have Ember of Singeing, so basically just the mere idea of scorching your enemies will automatically bring your healing rift back faster, or your class ability. So whatever you're running, whether it's Hunter for the dodge or Barricade for the Titans. Generally, overall, these are very good. They're very consistent, and these are kind of standard as well. And then for the last one, I have Ember of Mercy. So when you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration, and then picking up a fire sprite grants restoration. This is actually really nice. So basically, I still have some utility of being a medic. I mean, warlocks are naturally going to be healers while also dealing damage, so it would be natural if I'm running this particular subclass that I would have this on too. I want to keep my dudes out there alive as well as myself. And then Restoration is also a buff that Guardians get that allows for constant healing for a certain amount of time. Alright, so we're heading over to our weapons. I'm going to do that first. But before I even go over the weapons, let's go over the artifacts. So, for our perk here, we have Prismatic Transfer. So basically, when you activate your super, if the rest of your fire team is not rolling with solar, then they will all receive a weapon damage bonus or buff. If they are, then they don't take advantage of this. They're going to take advantage of the weapon damage buff that your Well of Radiance will provide, but that's about it. Rain of Firebolts gives me 2 Firebolt grenades, so that's it for that. Flare Up. So Flare Up allows the grenades to apply more Scorch stacks, and simply just using the grenade and having that grenade hit enemies will automatically produce a Fire Sprite. So we have another way of producing Fire Sprites. Bricks from Beyond, so if you have a Void Weapon, both these perks will be beneficial. So Bricks from Beyond allows you to use a Void Weapon, and the more kills you get with a Void Weapon, the more of a chance you get for heavy ammo. And if in the case like mine, where your Void Weapon is your heavy weapon, then that basically guarantees that you're going to just have ammo for the long run. And then Volatile Flow basically gives you volatile rounds when you pick up an Orb of Power, which this build actually will be producing quite often too. And Volatile is a debuff, a weakening debuff that will be applied to enemies, so when you shoot them, they will essentially be easier to kill. If you are versing a barrier champion, then once you are able to proc your volatile rounds, then it will essentially eat through their shield, causing them to be stunned, which allows you to hopefully kill them as they are stunned. Solar Surge, so collecting a fire sprite gives you armor charge. So I think at this point, we've essentially stretched out what a fire sprite can do now. So keep in mind, as I mentioned from the fragments, fire sprites automatically by default give you grenade energy. We also have it from Ember of Mercy, allowing for restoration to be procced when you pick up a fire sprite. And now we also have it to where the fire sprite gives you an armor charge, which is a little buff that you get that allows for essentially your armor pieces to start working for you if you have something that consumes the the armor charges. And then for the last seasonal perk, we have Shatter Orbs. So basically what you need to know with this is if you have a solar weapon, for example, and you break a solar shield with a solar weapon, then it drops an orb of power. That's pretty much it. So break elemental shield with corresponding elemental weapon. 4 orbs. Alright, so speaking of weapons, Heavy. We have the Retrofit Escapade. Very good weapon. Kind of pretty much it defined the meta last season. The seasons before that, it was the Taipon, so like linear fusion rifles was the meta, and then when this past season came and gone, it was the Retrofit Escapade. It did a whole bunch of damage, and it still does today. It's very consistent in what it does thanks to these two perks. So if you can get this weapon, which it is craftable, as you can see, so I would highly suggest that you get it. Try to see if you can roll it with or craft it with 4 times a charm, which rapidly landing precision hits will return 2 rounds to the magazine, increasing time between precision shots. So the more times you hit on the head, the more times you can get 2 rounds back. And then target lock basically states that the longer you hold the trigger, the higher the damage output is going to be. So it ramps up damage over time. So for my primary, I have the Chromo Rush. So I've had this since Season of Splicer. It's been a very reliable weapon, and I mainly run it just because of Wellspring. So Wellspring says kills with this weapon generate ability energy. This energy is divided between your uncharged abilities. So if I say, let's say I use my melee, and I sucked. I can get some kills with this, and it will start to charge my melee back. Likewise for the other ones as well. So good to have if you are in a little bit of a bind. And for the weapon of choice for this build, we have the Polaris Lance. So Polaris Lance is actually pretty unique in the sense that it has this nice little perk called the Perfect Fifth. So when you land 4 precision shots, the 5th shot will be a solar explosive round. So that can actually be used anywhere, really. So you get 4 headshots, and then on the 5th shot, you can basically shoot their body, shoot the ground, shoot another enemy. It won't matter because that 5th shot is guaranteed to be a solar explosive round, which is really nice. And because we have unstoppable champions, this is also the reason why I have this. Otherwise, I mean, I've actually been using the title when Guardian games first started. We're in the middle of Guardian games as the time of this video, and this weapon has like been really useful for most of my builds just because of the perk Classic Contender, which basically states that getting kills with that weapon will bring back ability energy. But yeah, so let's hop on over to the armor and see what we got. So for the helmet, we have Ash's Assets, Hands On, and Dynamo. So Ash's Assets and Hands On basically state that when you can get a kill with either a grenade or your melee, then it will produce an orb of power. With Dynamo, on the other hand, Dynamo, what it does, it actually kind of does what these two do, but differently. So when you get up to an opponent, if you use your Healing Rift, if you're a Warlock, then what Dynamo now does is it will go ahead, and as long as you are near enemies when you're using your Healing Rift, it will cool down your super. So it cools down the timer on your super, which is really nice. For our gauntlets, we have Firepower, Momentum Transfer, and Impact Induction. Basically, these two do the exact same thing, just different ways to proc it. So Momentum Transfer, when you damage an enemy with grenades, it will go ahead and reduce the cooldown of your melee, and vice versa. And if we can manage to get the kill with a grenade, then it will produce an orb of power through Firepower. Typically, your chest piece is going to come with defensive mods, but the one you need to be concerned about here, or at least pay attention to, will be charged up. So we are going to be producing armor charges, actually quite a bit. We have a nice healthy amount throughout our whole time with this build, so we want to make sure we could try to hold as many as possible, and this will at least guarantee that we can hold at least 1 extra. And then these two, just because at this point the points are pretty much, as you can see, it's 9 out of 10, so I just stuck these in there just to kind of fill this whole area out. For our leg armor, we have Insulation and Innervation. Basically, they do the exact same thing when you pick up an Orb of Power, just for their respective areas. So, pick up an Orb of Power, it reduces the ability cooldown. So this is for our Rift, for Warlock, so our Healing Rift will come back a little bit faster, and same thing with our grenade. For this, when we pick up an orb of power, typically we get 1 armor charge, but this will allow us to have 2 armor charges. And then for our bond, we have 2 stacks of bomber. So basically when we use our healing rift, we will get a nice little chunk of grenade energy back. And then of course, if you just happen to be in a bind where you couldn't get your healing rift back, then we have utility finisher. We will always at some point be rocking at least 3 armor charges, so this will give us the ability to weaken an enemy and then finish them off, so that way we can get our healing rift back and kind of put everything back into the flow. And then if you guys have noticed, this one has 5 mods, and that's because this is a artifice armor, so they're usually pieces of armor that you get from master level dungeons. And yeah, that's pretty much the build. The whole I guess shtick with this build is you get to an enemy, use your healing rift, lower down your super while you are either using grenades or your melee. You ideally want to use your incinerator snap and aim it towards the ground, so that way when it hits the enemy, it will apply all the stacks of scorch and therefore causing an instant ignition to happen. Oh yeah, of course, how could I forget? The armor piece, the armor of choice. So we have the Phoenix Protocol. I would consider this like the distant relative of the Starfire Protocol. So basically what this does is that kills and assists you make while standing in your Well of Radiance return super energy. So this is actually really nice because this armor gives you about 50% back. And then of course you're relying on your abilities for the rest of the way, which to be honest, I've pretty much used this build and it's very consistent, and you don't have to worry about trying to make up for that because I've been able to pop another Well of Radiance while still in my first one, and then likewise for the second one. So this is actually super useful when it comes to its ability to consistently get Well of Radiance back. And yeah, that's pretty much the build. So use your super, or no, sorry, use your healing rift near enemies to lower the cooldown. Use your grenades because, you know, we got more than one, and of course we can create fire sprites. Create those fire sprites so you can get these babies, so while you're picking up your orbs of power and your fire sprites, you're gaining armor charges like crazy. And then of course you always have a backup just in case you don't have immediate access to your healing rift. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I actually really enjoyed this build. I hope you guys do. Please make sure you give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe because I do have more videos here that I will be showing. And I got these 2 builds right here that I am kind of playing around with. So see you guys next time on whatever I decide to do. And ta-ta for now.